Hello there my RPG lovers and welcome to another video. I was always a huge fan of Larian studio, even before it was cool I guess.
I'm flattered, but I'm afraid this is neither the time nor the place for frivolities and frolicking.
The original Divinity 2 was one of my most favorite RPGs back in the day, and I made a big retrospective video about it not so long ago. The huge breakthrough point for Larian were obviously original sin games, and now they finally managed to go mainstream with Baldur's Gate 3, which makes me really happy. Larian was always really ambitious and talented studio, and all of the shortcomings in their older games could be attributed to the lack of budgets. However, Baldur's Gate 3 feels like a proper AAA RPG.
Not a trick, my friend. Magic.
A AAA RPG without any microtransactions or in-game purchases, believe it or not. I wasn't that sure if I'm going to like this game that much, simply because I'm not a huge fan of turn-based gameplay. But I wasn't planning to skip the game from the studio I like, just because of that. So here are my first impressions of the game after about 15 hours of gameplay.
What's better than a devil you don't know?
Right after the sponsor of the video. Do you like dark fantasy RPGs? Of course you do. Bloodline Heroes of Lithas has a vast world of fantasy races like demons, lycans, demigods and a lot more. All champions you collect in Bloodline are brought to life with stunning 3D graphics on mobile devices and smartpads. You can download this game for free by using the link in the description or by scanning the QR code if you're watching on the PC. The most impressive feature in this game is the ability to combine any two bloodlines to create over 1000 hybrids. This unique gacha gameplay makes endless possibilities for your lineups and matchmaking strategies. The hybrids have unique appearances, passed down from each family tree and fused into one. The game is constantly being updated to ensure that creating new hybrid combinations never ends. Every 2 weeks you're going to see new bloodlines with unique abilities and companion forms for each gender. There is a rewarding late game PvP where all players can obtain Bloodcraft Legends, a uniquely designed hybrid champions by earning points in seasonal guild wars. Raise heirs with your waifus, companions. You can freely switch genders of companions, build your kingdom with strategy gameplay and experience interesting storylines. So download the game right now by using the link in the description or by scanning the QR code if you're watching on the PC. You'll get a special starter pack worth $20. The first 30 players who leave their in-game account ID and username in the first pinned comment section below will receive a free legendary orc champion. Ugrul is one of the best warriors in the game. I play this game on my PC with my PS5 controller, so don't let the UI confuse you. The UI will automatically switch depending on which input method you use. Ever since I first saw the early gameplay of Baldur's Gate 3, I knew it's going to have some serious Divinity Original Sin vibes. I mean, it was obvious, right? The first zone you get to explore in the game gave me some heavy Fort Joy vibes. But that's probably because of the very similar art style and the vibrant color palette. Baldur's Gate 3 is definitely a colorful game, but it can also get dark and explicit when needed. Maybe too explicit or gross would be a better word to describe some situations. Unless you're into ogres.
What the hell are you doing?
Yeah, anyway, what I'm trying to say, the game looks amazing in general. The quality of the character models has to be the biggest improvement compared to their previous games. Baldur's Gate 3 puts a huge emphasis on storytelling, there are a bunch of cutscenes in the game. There are also a lot of fantasy races in the game and they receive the same amount of attention to detail. I mean, if you're going to spend so much time staring at the characters up close, you better make sure they look good, right? We can say the same about the environment in the game. Exploration is really enjoyable so far, and I noticed they made some improvements when it comes to the terrain. What I mean by that, your character and all the followers can seamlessly traverse some steep terrain, which was not possible in original Sin games. And you can also use the jump ability, which helps a lot. But the best part about the world is how interactive it actually is. This is where all the D&D features come into play.
I'd swear that ox's gaze is following me.
Literally everything you do in the game is related to dice rolling and other D&D rules. To tell you the truth, I'm not a huge fan when it comes to some D&D rules, but that's more of a me problem. I've been preaching about the freedom in open world RPGs a lot, and that's one of the major strengths of this game, as far as I can tell so far. For example, you can straight up attack the majority, if not all characters, as soon as you start the dialogue with them. The unlinear nature of the game truly shines from the very beginning, and that's only one of the examples I can think of. I also like the simple premise of the main story and how flexible it is. Your character gets infected by this being called the Mind Flayer, and you're basically searching for a way to cure yourself. You can play with a custom character or choose to go with one of the pre-made characters. Yet another feature from original Sin games, and it works really well in this game as well. There is a very good character customization menu which allows you to make a unique looking character. I chose to go with a custom character because you're going to meet all of the pre-made characters in the game anyway. You also get to make a guardian in the beginning, and only after a couple of hours of gameplay, this starts to make more sense. I really like how Larian is gradually introducing more layers of depth without overwhelming the player in the beginning. All of these characters have very memorable personalities brought to life by amazing voice actors and visuals.
Hello, I'm Gale of Waterdeep. Apologies, I'm usually better at this.
It doesn't take long to notice how developed they actually are, which is kinda insane. A lot of RPGs struggle with character development in general. And then you have Baldur's Gate 3, where even in the first 15 hours you get to see a lot of character development for pretty much all companions. All of them have secrets, agendas, and not to mention attitudes. They also suffer from the same disease, and you're telepathically connected with them because of it. But like I said before, you have so much freedom in this game, and you can choose to react differently in pretty much all situations. It seems like everything you choose to do in the game affects the gameplay. The magnitude of your decisions depend on how extremely you react. If you watch my videos, you know I rant a lot about the illusion of choice in RPGs. Well, even the most minor choice seems to affect something in this game, which is amazing. There is a bunch of party banter and actual interaction between the companions. Your decisions will affect how they feel towards you, but I still don't know how this actually affects the gameplay. The party features feel very similar to games like Dragon Age, so if you play those games, you know what to expect from Baldur's Gate 3. The parasite that's in your head will give you some unique options in dialogue, which you can choose to resist or just go with it. I think this is one of the features that allow you to play as an evil character, I guess, if you choose to accept the quote-unquote gift you get from the parasites. All party members are having the same identity crisis, but that's only one of their problems. It all comes down to how you choose to react in dialogue, and even more importantly, the dice roll. Speaking of dice roll, let's talk about my first impressions of the gameplay in general. When you start the game, you can choose one of many available classes or even try to double class. I went with a fighter and I'm really enjoying this class right now. After a couple of levels you get to choose a subclass and you get a certain amount of new skills and abilities. In true D&D fashion, you can only use a certain amount of spells until you take a long rest in your camp. This is where the game starts adding more layers of depth within the story and gameplay elements. I expected to see some minor interaction within the camp, like friendly chatter with one of the companions. But the game can throw you a curveball, which can essentially affect your whole playthrough. It's kinda hard to talk about this without spoiling anything. And it all comes down to that freedom of choice talk we had before. All characters get a bunch of preset abilities, like jumping, going into stealth, dash, and so on. Even those regular abilities can decide the outcome of some fights, which is pretty cool. There is a wide variety of options you get in fights from different character spells and how you interact with the environments. Even on lower levels, it seems like you have more than enough abilities to use in combat and make a proper strategy for defeating the enemy. I like how you can get completely crushed in some fights because your party is underleveled, and I was surprised how early you can stumble upon some strong enemy. It seems like there is no level scaling in the game because you can find some higher level enemies that are not worth fighting at all until you get stronger. Don't quote me on that, but that's how it seems to me so far. And leveling up is definitely on the slower side, which I like because it gives you more time to get that sense of progression and enjoy the early game. It's nothing new when it comes to Larian games. Divinity Original Sin 2 also had a very good early game. The itemization seems fine so far as well, but I would have to play a lot more to give you my in-depth thoughts about it. I'm playing the game unbalanced and I think the difficulty of the game is spot on. Well, that's the perspective of a guy who doesn't play a lot of turn-based RPGs. The enemies you're going to fight are not a pushover by any means on this difficulty. The enemy AI is really good, which is not surprising to me at all. Larian obviously used all the experience they had from original Sin games. I remember how good the enemy AI was in original Sin 2, so this feels pretty much the same, if not even better. Maybe even too good for normal difficulty, but I enjoy the challenge regardless. What was the most impressive thing to me is how well the enemy uses the environment advantage. You have more than enough time to figure out what to do in combat and how to properly combine spells and abilities, position your characters and so on. So the combat feels very enjoyable in general. Even if your main character dies, that's not the end of the game, assuming at least one of the characters is still alive. The story of the game uses this mechanic in a clever way, but I'm afraid I would spoil some very interesting interactions you can have if I talk more about this. The only problem I have with this style of combat in general is how slow it can be. It also relies a lot on trial and error, which can give you the feel of the scripted gameplay sometimes. As soon as you notice that you're probably going to lose the fight, I assume that most players will just reload the save before the combat and try again, with the newly acquired knowledge you have from the fight before. That's not bad per se, but like I said, it can feel very slow, especially when you're losing. The turns can take forever, especially when there are a lot of enemies on the screen. But those would be my personal problems with the turn-based combat in general. Speaking of which, the dice roll dialogue can also have the same negative aspects, which can just encourage you to save scum more. Fail the dice roll dialogue that you really wanted to succeed, reload the save and try again until you get it. If you don't have any issues with that game logic, you're not going to care. I find it a bit annoying sometimes, but not nearly enough to make me wanna quit the game. There are also some minor issues I found, like the delay when you press the button to talk with the character, and a long pause between some dialogue lines. Putting all of that aside, what I really hoped to see in this game was the humor aspect that Larian was known for. Humor is subjective, but I personally think that Larian has an amazing sense of humor in their games.
Here lies Sleepy Joe, doing what he does best.
And Divinity 2, a game that I mentioned before, is my favorite silly RPG because of the dialogue like this. Larian definitely improved the dialogue a lot in their newer games, but I'm glad we still have the same silly sense of humor. The voice acting is better than ever, which only makes the humorous dialogue even more effective.
Stop this thing!
By the way, I think this game took the best approach to dialogue when it comes to the character you control. First of all, I always prefer a silent protagonist, and this game is like that in a way. You will have the option to select a different voice for a character in the beginning, but you will only get to hear some of the dialogue lines in certain situations. When you're talking to people, the option you select will be instant. That means that your character won't try to repeat it, and the character you're talking with will just instantly respond. This makes the dialogue faster because your character will not speak the option you select. I mean, you will read it anyway before you select it, so it makes sense. I thought this was only for the custom character you make, but it's actually for all characters as long as you control them directly. It's a small thing, but I really like it. Oh, and by the way, you probably heard about the bear sex before the game released, but there are far worse things you will encounter in the game, trust me. So it seems like the game has it all. It became so rare to get this feeling from a newly released AAA RPG. The feeling where all features in the game feel fully developed. I'm really enjoying my time with the game so far, even though I'm not a fan of turn-based gameplay. So if you're like me, I would highly encourage you to try this game out, even if you don't like turn-based gameplay that much. I mean, I don't hate this style of gameplay, I just prefer a more action-oriented gameplay in general. That would be a silly reason to miss out on such an amazing RPG experience that Baldur's Gate 3 offers. I'm still early in the game, so my opinion might change, although I highly doubt it. There will be much more to talk about in the review, but I probably won't do it soon since I heard that the game is massive. I only played the single player mode so far, but there is online and LAN co-op as well. Anyway, tell me about your first impressions of the game in the comments below. Do you agree or disagree with me? Let me know. I just launched my personal store where you can buy some interesting t-shirts and hoodies. Check out some cool designs in the theme of the channel, like this RPG Zone hoodie or Nameless Hero t-shirt. But you'll find a lot more if you follow the link in the description. I think that's a great way to get something back for supporting the channel. And of course, you can always become a Patreon or a YouTube member and get your name on the end credits of my videos. Many thanks to all of my current supporters, and I'll see you in the next one.